This is the Chester County Real Estate Podcast, bringing you the info you need to make your next move a great one.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Chester County Real Estate Podcast. I'm your host, Sean Dominski. This is the show that gives you the information you need to make your next move a great one. This episode, we're sitting down with Stephen Marx. Stephen, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good. How are you, Sean?
Good. So I just want to, we're a little bit past halfway through 2023, and I just wanted to talk a little bit about what the market's doing, what the market in Chester County is doing, and kind of get like a ground level perspective of what's going on in the market, who's buying, who's selling, and what it's looking like for people who are thinking about either buying a house or selling a house sometime between now and the end of the year, maybe. And kind of like see how the spring went, and how the summer's looking. So thanks for joining me.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having me. As far as business has been going lately, it's been doing good still. I still see a lot of activity in the real estate market. It's more towards just the type of buyer that we're seeing right now. So,
let's take a little bit bird's eye view. So, what did 2023 look for you? We were talking earlier. So far you've had 15 closings, and that's a wide range variety of types of deals, right?
Yes.
And the other thing is you're working with a lot of investors. So you're seeing the rental market, you're seeing the investor market, the flipping market, the resale market, just typical buyers and sellers as well too, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no. So I deal with majority investors, first-time home buyers, and then one or two of them were downsizing situations. Cool. So that's the majority of what I've been seeing, and like what I've been working with in the market.
Now, I feel like, so rates is a big deal, right? So it seems like every time they start to level out, they bump back up a little bit. I think that happened the other day where we were like, things have been kind of good. Oh, wait, no, it's high now or higher. How have you seen that affecting people? How have you seen that affect buyers, and how have you seen that affect sellers?
I'll be honest, I haven't really gotten the rate question too much recently. It's more towards just like when I do get it, I kind of just let them know, like, hey, completely understand the rates that are kind of high right now. And that's completely understandable. Best thing you guys can really do is just refinance later on. And that's kind of just like the overall perspective of it. Because like right now, like you're getting like a 7.2% interest rate. Like that is pretty high. It is kind of like the national average across the board is like 7 to 8%. So they're still buying with an average median. They're not like getting a super deal at a 5% interest rate, but they're still with an average. And
would you say that most of the buyers, as they're looking at houses, even though the interest rate is going to affect what they can qualify for, are they pretty much thinking like, well, I am going to refinance this rate?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
That's like the overall perspective of what I'm seeing right now. A lot of people, I make sure personally that, they're buying it so that if they do need to rent it out, the numbers still do make sense across the board, so they're not going to get screwed over on the interest rate, which is a big plus. But a lot of them, that's what they're viewing in their head is like, okay, well, like either way, if I get flipped upside down, like I lose my job, I'm not going to lose the house.
Yeah.
Is their perspective on it. And then they're still looking at it where they're buying below their means and they're able to afford the place, because that's what you should always do across the board. Don't stretch yourself thin, The houses that you could afford at a 5%, they're going to be a lot harder to afford at a 7%. So let's start looking at our different options here, And that's what we've seen a lot across the board too, is loan officers been coming out with all these different programs, being able to help people, I've been seeing a lot of that stuff.
Well, I did an episode about a month ago, I think now, with Dominic Canatelli. We were talking about the all-in-one program. So it helps people pay down their mortgage faster. So the beauty there is that if you have a higher interest rate, but you pay off your mortgage a third faster than you would have otherwise, then you're not paying all that extra interest. You're paying significantly less. And then there's other ways too. I'm a big fan of 15-year mortgages. Yeah. No one else seems to agree with me on that except for those adamant Dave Ramsey followers.
It's all about like perspective of it. Like I was always taught you get a 30-year mortgage. Okay, with that 30-year mortgage, you make that extra principal payment per year. Okay, in reality, then now it's paid off in 24.
Yeah.
All right, and you're cutting a huge amount of interest off the table. And then what you can do later on is you can refinance. And when you refinance, you can either choose to get that 15-year mortgage or whatever the numbers make the most sense.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of just the way I was taught with it. That's the normal thing I recommend too, was like clients, like when you get the property and say you get the property with mortgage insurance, so it's like an extra, what, like $150, $200?
Yeah.
You know, so once they get to that 20% range, what I kind of tell them is I say, hey, like that $100, $200, like if you don't need it, like, 'cause it's like something that's like you've been paying anyway, take that, add it up, write a check strictly for principal.
Right.
Okay, because that's just going to help you pay it off sooner and faster. And people don't realize though, that those payments like add up really fast. Just because like if you look at your amortization schedule when you first get it, like your first year is like $70 out of like that $1,700 is going towards principal, compared to like it's just strictly interest.
Yeah.
You know, so when you're making these principal payments, you know, you're cutting away those months and months and months of just strictly interest payments.
Yeah. Yeah. My first house, 15-year mortgage, I think it was 2 or 3 years into it. No, it was, I'm going to mix this all up. This is years ago. I think it was like 3 years into it, we refinanced into a 10-year mortgage. So we had 12 years left, refinanced into a 10-year. Because of the rate change and removing the PMI, our payment stayed the same. It was shockingly not life-changing, you know? Like everything stayed the same, but it was so weird because after I signed those papers and everything went through, it was like 2 years of 2 years of payments got shaved off. And I was kind of like, it was weird because at the time, I'm trying to think, like maybe that was like around, let's say it was like 12, I'm terrible at math. Let's say it was like $15,000 a year because it was a smaller house. It was like, wow, that was like 30 grand. I just literally just gone. And it was because, I mean, and that's what it's mostly because I was paying it off faster, you know, paying it down faster. And there's different programs. You have like you've seen the biweekly program. Mm-hmm. That's very popular. Depending, and you have to look to see what bank offers it, but where you pay every 2 weeks instead of paying every month. Yeah, just adding extra to your principal, something like the all-in-one that we talked about in the other episode, or getting like a lesser term loan. Now, I'm just a big fan of that. And a lot of agents, obviously, the idea is you buy a house, you buy a house at the top of your means that you can barely afford, and then like 5-6 years later, when you're in a better place, you know, financially, you sell that house and you buy another house that's at the very top of those means. And it's just kind of like, I have to tell people, I'm like, no, why don't, if you find yourself in a better financial position 5 or 10 years after buying that house, like consider refinancing or paying that mortgage down faster. It's just in the long run, it's going to put you in a much better place to weather any kind of storms. Yeah. And having seen like this might have been a little bit before your time, but having gone through like all the hype of like 04 to 06, seeing that like gradual confusing time around 2007 where you're like, okay, things are shifting, but it's okay. And then like the complete crash in 2008, you're like, oh wow. So, and it was people that were just doing so well. Like if they didn't have a good foundation. Now, fortunately on the East Coast, we were very conservative in how we did our loans and just in general. So we didn't see like carnage that they might have saw in the Midwest or so where they were building like crazy. But, you know, that's the kind of stuff that weathers those crazy events that you may or may not have seen coming.
Yeah. So like you're talking about like the good foundation. That's why like I always like just kind of like sit down and talk to my clients like to view their first time home purchase, like for first time home buyers, you need to view this as like you're starting a business. Because that's in reality what you're doing. You're transferring a lump sum of money that you've earned and you've worked hard for into an asset that you're buying. Okay? So, you know, you're kind of starting your own financial business here. So what do you need to figure out? You know, where's your return going to be at? How are you going to be able to live comfortably still while still being able to afford the place? So that's kind of like you were saying, like a lot of people's mindset is I'm going to buy something I can barely afford and hopefully buy something I can barely afford again. It's like, no, you don't want to do that. Like when you get your first property, that is a foundation towards, you know, however you want to run the business. Now, a lot of people, they'll probably decide to sell the place a couple years down the road, But like, say you decided to rent the place a couple years down the road. Well, now that rental income is now on your proof of income for your next mortgage, So that bigger house that you wanted, honestly, might be easier to get with renting it compared to selling. It just really depends on how the loan officer runs the numbers and how everything gets figured out.
Right.
Because you're building that strong foundation, to have. You're building it so you're like, okay, well, I know I can make X amount of money above my mortgage payment. Okay. And like, say like a lot of these people that bought in 2020, 2021, like they have 3% loans. Like, to me, I would never want to get rid of that because like in today's market, that's free money.
Right.
In a sense, like my high yield savings account gives me 4.65%, something like that.
Yeah.
So like my money's better off sitting literally in my savings account than it is paying off my mortgage.
Right.
And that's how I view it. So it's
well, now if you could go out and buy and get another mortgage on another house, like get an investment, it's probably better to. In some situations, it might be better to go out and get another investment than to necessarily pay down your mortgage with your insanely low rate.
Yeah.
So being like, given your experience so far, like with the deals that you've done, let's kind of like jump into. I'm thinking of like these different like segments of buyers. So have you noticed a difference in the mindset of first-time home buyers from like a year ago, 2 years ago, up until now? Like, is there a lot of has the hype died down? Is their willingness to go above asking kind of diminished, or what are you kind of feeling there?
It's definitely a big difference, I think I'm noticing. Now, first-time home buyers are buying houses because they need to buy houses compared to a couple years ago where it was just like, I want to buy a house is kind of what I've noticed.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is I'm noticing like a lot more of my clientele has been, like, hey, like I'm in this specific situation and I kind of have to move. Okay. And that's like, that's why they're buying their first house. They want to get out of renting, whatever it may be. That's kind of just what I've noticed, compared to before where it was like, hey, like we're just going to, keep moving around the market and see where the market leads us to. But next thing they noticed, rates did go from 4 to 7 and all this other stuff. And they're like, okay, well, now I can't afford the house that I used to live in. So now I kind of just, I used to want.
Yeah.
So now I need to figure out like what can I afford now, and because I kind of actually need to move now.
Do you see so specifically first-time buyers, are they reducing, are they changing what they want? Are they are their goals and wants in a house changing with the market shift? Or are they dropping out of the search altogether? Are they re-signing that lease and they're like, well, we'll just rent for another year or 2 years and changing and just dropping out of the market altogether?
So I think this is really where it comes into play, like having the right agent. Because there is a lot of people who are like, hey, we're just going to re-sign the lease because nothing out there we really do want right now. Like I definitely do see that a good amount. But there's also, like as an agent, you need to learn to set expectations for your clients. Okay, so when you're setting these expectations, you need to let them know, like, hey, I might be able to get you 3 out of the 4 things you want. And that's all truth and reality right now, just because of the way the market is and the way the interest rates are, you might not get that pool that you want, but you're going to get the 3 beds, 2 baths in the school district that you want.
Right. Or you can get the massive yard, but it's going to be a little bit farther from work than you originally said you wanted to go.
Exactly.
So it's like you have to make a choice.
Yeah, it's exactly just kind of setting their pattern, their expectations with it. And I tell a lot of my first-time home buyers, I let them know, don't plan on this being your forever home.
Yeah.
Plan on this being your starter home. And I think that's what we've kind of pulled away from the past couple of years is everybody's like, I want to buy my forever home. Like, I want to be able to just, live here like for the next 40, whatever, 50 years. But now just because of the way the market is and the way that, the economy is, there is that starter home mindset coming back.
Yeah, I don't think it's been... I don't think it's that recent. I feel like it's been that way for a while now, maybe a decade or two. Not 2, but for a while. So I think there's a right way and a wrong way to approach a starter home. The wrong way would be I need to get anything and I'm willing to pay anything for it. And what I saw, so I remember back, like 2008 to 2010 when things were really rocky. people were getting stuck in their small 1 to 2 bedroom condos. So if you have like a 2-bedroom condo and you have a kid and you're like, it's kind of working and it's all right, but you're thinking of moving, and then you have like another kid and now it's like, shoot, now we're stuck. And then the market crashes, you're stuck. So I say, like, when you're looking at starter homes, make sure it's something that you could live there functionally for a while if you had to. And that's kind of I think I've actually said this before on the show. That's like my 2008 like PTSD. It's like, well, if the whole market crashes, make sure that you're not like homeless, just have some, make sure you can stay there for the long haul. But you're right in the sense that I hate to keep, man, I can't believe this is the second time I'm bringing this guy up, but Dave Ramsey said at one point, he was like, one of the problems with kind of like the generation is that people get out of school and they expect to have the same standard of living that their parents accomplished in their 40s and 50s. They're looking at the houses that they grew up in, or similar to that. And, it's just not a reality. It's like, you look at your parents, they're in they bought the house that you grew up in at the peak of their career, maybe in their 40s, generally. I don't want to make too many assumptions of how old people are, but that's just like a very common kind of time of your life to have that step-up house. So you grew up in this, probably a great house, right? That's what you're thinking of when you're going out to buy a house. You're not thinking like small little like cottage cape type of thing. But when you realize the concept, when you realize the purpose of a starter house and how it works in the long term, like, it makes a lot of sense. And honestly, I think it's good for any market. It's just a matter of how people kind of view it. It seems like in the hotter market, people want to jump out, get the most expensive thing possible because that's what everyone else is doing. So, I do feel like that's been a common mindset over the last several years, honestly. So.
Yeah, but I mean, exactly what you're saying with that, though. Like, it's just the importance back to like the importance of a foundation. Yeah. Like when you're buying the starter home, like you just said, when the market does crash, make sure you're not going to go homeless. Yeah. So that's the importance of like building that steady and like knowing what your expectations are and setting the expectations in the market.
So shifting on from first-time home buyers, you've worked with a lot of renters. So in the sense that you've worked with the investors and stuff, you're looking at a lot of rental applications. Is the rental demand still going strong? Have you seen any kind of decline there? Or what's your like finger on the pulse as far as the rental demand in Chester County?
I think it 100% depends on the location. Yeah. I had a rental in Westchester, and honestly, we received less applications compared to the one that I had in Coatesville. The one, the one in Coatesville I had, I think it really just depends on what people are looking for right now. I mean, the one in Westchester was significantly more. Yeah. So it's understandable that people instead of paying $2,200 a month, they want to pay $1,800 a month. Mm-hmm. Completely understand that. Save themselves a good chunk of change there. But yeah, I mean, when I had my most recent one in Coatesville, I mean, we definitely had a lot of showings in there through. When I held the open house for the rental, a lot of people showed up. It was like, again, too, we were getting a lot of people to show up. As far as application wise, though, you're still looking at 6, 7, 8 applications. Yeah. I mean, that's still a lot of people that are coming in.
6 to 8 is really all you need. You don't really need 40 applications to make it to rent something out, and that's what people were seeing at one point, right? Like, that was like a common thing people were saying.
Yeah, we had the one a couple months back that I had in Coatesville. It was like 60-something odd showings plus, and it was just like off of that, I think we got like 13 or 14 applications. And it's no 40 applications with that, but again, too, you're looking at, that's a good amount of people through within the 2 weeks' time or the week's time that the thing's been on the market. So it's obviously there are people out there with the demand that are looking to, rent still too.
And I wonder if, I guess there's part of me that wonders, like, there's also an application weariness, like kind of like with offers for buying a house. Like, buyers, they're going to get tired of constantly getting their offer rejected, and over time they're going to be like, all right, well, they're going to be a little bit more particular on when on what they make their offers on, because they get kind of weary of it. fatigue, offer fatigue kind of thing. And I wonder if there's like an application fatigue where it's just like, okay, well, unless we really think we're going to get it or really have a good chance here, it's like, I wonder if people are kind of not applying to as many places as a couple years ago when it was like, well, we got to apply to, like, the more places we apply, the more likely we're going to get it. Now they're like, okay, well, no, that's not necessarily how it works. It's the more qualified we are, the more this is a good fit for us, we're more likely to get it. If it's not a good fit, let's not just throw an application in. It's hard to say either way. And I don't like just looking at data and just trying to extrapolate individual cases. That's why I like asking. It's like, okay, like, you have experience. I just want to know, what are you seeing? Because I get it. Like, another agent's going to see a complete opposite perspective, and I want to know that.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, I think we're still seeing like hot across the board as far as everything for Chester County.
Well, I think it's great that you're getting a ton of applications in Coatesville at all. I remember when, I'm trying to think, years ago when I was doing property management, I just remember one listing I had in Coatesville was a little bit on the higher end, and it just took a long time to get that rented out. It just, at the time, renters were not interested in renting, in the higher end Coatesville listings. If it was in maybe a different school district, a little bit, it possibly would have, I'm seeing listings go, or rental listings rent out faster in the other school districts. But that was an issue back then. And now it's like, okay, well, people need places to live. It's not as much of a detriment to getting those applications as it was maybe years ago, at least in my experience. Yeah. So
I think now it's because it is so hot, people are just kind of changing expectations of what they want.
Yeah.
And that's what that's why we are seeing, like, certain areas get more traction than others. People want, everything's so expensive nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
People want to save that extra $200, $300. They don't care.
So, shifting gears again, because I don't want to take up too much time here, but as far as the offers that you're getting accepted from the buyer, the resale offers, so people buying a house, what do you see sellers looking for right now? Has that shifted or changed? Obviously, a good offer is a good offer, but are there anything more specific? Like, are they looking for faster closings? Is that no longer an issue? It feels like home inspections came back over the last year.
Yeah, I feel like they're always looking for quick and easy. That's always going to be the case here. That's how I usually try to structure all of my offers. Home inspections definitely are making a comeback. I've this year alone, I think I've only waived inspections on like 2 or 3 deals. The rest have had inspections, and a part of that comes negotiation and trying to figure things out. But a lot of these houses, they're still getting 2 to 3 offers pretty quickly, and that's still a multi-offer situation to deal with. So
obviously, if it's priced right,
exactly.
If it's priced right, if it's priced poorly, then yeah, it's not going to sell.
That's when it sits on the market for a little bit, and then you have that negotiation power of saying, "Hey, here's my offer. Take it or leave it." But most of the time right now we are still seeing sellers in the driver's seat when it comes to stuff. So as far as the 2 to 3 offer situations that you're seeing, it's more towards like, hey, what is the seller looking for settlement date wise? I've noticed a lot of people like hey, school time's coming up, I'd either want to get this done before the school opens up, or I don't care. But there's a lot of people that, they want to make sure it's done before August. There's, as far as hey, how fast can we get a mortgage contingency? I feel like that's been a big thing too, because a lot of people want the contingencies done faster, is what I'm seeing. Just because I feel like a lot of deals now compared to they were before, they are falling through. Mm-hmm. Personally, I haven't had, knock on wood, any fall through yet this year. But it's more towards just, that's what some of these sellers are seeing is hey, this house is under contract and then it wasn't under contract and now it's under contract again. I don't want that situation. So how can I prevent that? Shorter contingency period. That, and then just making sure you have a strong offer. Earnest money deposit's always going to be important. There's a lot of people out there that are saying, I'll give you $1,000. $1,000 on half of the, $500,000 house isn't acceptable. So it's just more towards just making sure you meet the seller's needs, and you can figure that out pretty easily as long as, your agent's asking the right questions.
Yeah. And I try to remind people earnest money, it's less it's less a show of money. It's more of a show of how serious they are about the offer. So the problem with $1,000 isn't that the seller's only going to get $1,000 if you back out. It's that how serious are you? You could have submitted 6 of these, and if it's only $1,000 deposit money, you can just back out of the 5. Or that's a drop in the bucket compared for a $500,000 house. So it's like you have to show you're serious, and that's really what the point is, behind it. But yeah, it's just another way, when you can display how serious you are about the offer and about the house, then it gives that seller that reassurance that this is going to go through. So, if someone is thinking of moving in the next year, what are you telling them? What's the advice that you're giving them?
I think it's more towards, it just depends on people's situations. I don't think there's ever really going to be a best time for, downsizers, or there's going to be a best time for upsizers. It's just more towards on what their situation is and how they plan on tackling it. And that's why I think building the proper structure in the deals is the most important thing. For the next year, we're going to see, a lot of economical differences happen. There's no predictions on, I've seen some things saying we're going to see interest rates in the 5s, maybe even high 4s by next year. I've seen some people say, hey, man, we're still going to hit 8. So depending on where that goes, it'll depend on how hot and active the buyers are in the market. Pretty much what I'm telling people right now is just like, make sure we buy strong and make sure if we're selling, we're selling firm on a number that, we need to be able to still be financially steady. Because that's what it comes down to. You don't want to just sell your house for pennies on the dollar. Right. You want to make sure that you can get the most for your house and your money goes furthest. Same thing when you buy something, you want to make sure your money goes as far as it possibly can. Yeah.
Awesome. All right, man, what's the best way people can get a hold of you?
Give me a call, 484-883-0928, or check out my website, stephenmarks.remax.com.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thanks a lot, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening. This has been the Chester County Real Estate Podcast, brought to you by RE/MAX ACE Realty, serving buyers and sellers in the Chester County area. Subscribe for new episodes at acerealtypa.com/podcast. And you can find us on Facebook, YouTube, and wherever podcasts are found.